The Baskerville family's hound named Vicar Van Baskerville served the family, and he was loyal to his family and father. He was falsely charged and framed for associating with the Demon Clan, and he was sentenced to the guillotine. At the guillotine, he decided that if he was given an opportunity to live again after he caught the rabbit, which is his prey, he wouldn't like to live as a hound again. He eventually dies, and as his last breath stops, he wakes up as a baby at the hospital. He still has the memory of his old life, and he looks around wondering where he is. He sees that his body is heavy and his surrounding is loud, and he considers if he is in hell. He turns out he has been reincarnated as a little child at the grand estate of the Baskerville family. While he wonders where he is, the Baskerville family patriarch, Hugo Lou Baskerville, comes there, and he calls the kids in significant breaths. He tells the midwives that there are no special children in the kids that have been gathered, and he thinks they have only gathered trash at that period. As Hugo passes beside him, he stops and says he is a little bit quieter than the other trash. He commands the maids to move the children to the cradle of swords, and they prepare to do so. Vicar immediately recognizes Hugo as the main culprit of his framing and execution. However, looking at Hugo again, he sees that the appearance of Hugo that he is seeing is his younger appearance. He raises his hands up and checks further until he is really certain of what he is saying. He informs that he has regressed to the time when he was a baby. He knows he has lived his past life as a hound. He was born into an illegitimate family, and he received training in a poor environment. As per his training, he knows a hound must be devoted to his mission, like assassination, intelligence, ambush, threatening, and any other mission. As a hound, he needs to take care of all kinds of dirty work, and everything is done in order to make the Baskerville family the best of the 7 families. The reason he had remained loyal to his duty was simple: all he wanted was to be acknowledged by the family and Hugo. About 10 years after the gate to the demonic realm opened, the fight against demons ended, with humans winning the fight. The reward that was given to him, the loyal hound who served the family his whole life, was to be killed. There was just a reason why he was executed, and the reason was that he knew too much. He promises himself, looking at the new opportunity he has gotten, that he will never live that kind of life again. He says he wants his revenge immediately. But with the body of a newborn baby, there is really nothing he can do. However, he feels being moved to the cradle of swords is a good opportunity for him to become strong. And the only important thing to him at the moment is for him to become stronger. He remembers how the cradle of sword is. In their family, children born into the Baskerville must go through one trial. They are thrown into a maze of swords. And after going through that, they need to get to the Styx River to be examined for their talents. The Styx River is a legendary river that turns the bodies of children into iron. However, there is a limit to how many children it can affect. So in order to get to the Styx River first, he needs to head straight out of the helix-shaped wall of blades. In his past life, he was ousted by his siblings, and he couldn't receive the effect. But he will ensure that wouldn't be the case for him this time around. He decides he will monopolize the Styx River's blessing for as long as he can. He is inside the water, and he sees the water seeping deep into his body and bones through his cuts. He is glad that the beginning of this version of his life is actually great, and he feels having a great start will make such a big difference in his journey. He remains inside the water in hopes of enduring the pressure for as long as he can. He promises himself that no matter how painful it is for him at the moment, he will endure it all. The servants get concerned because he has been inside the water for a long time. They call out for him, telling him that he needs to come out, and if he stays underwater for a long time, he will die. They realize he isn't ready to come out, so they prepare to enter and bring him out. Hugo is interested in how things are going. He asks his butler, Barrymore, how long Vicar has been inside the river, and Barrymore says about 7 minutes has passed. Barrymore is the head butler of the Baskerville family. Hugo feels that since Vicar has spent 7 minutes in the water, if he stays any longer, he may die. So Hugo goes nearer to the river and asks Vicar to come out. Vicar hears the voice inside the river and figures it's Hugo's voice. He wonders if Hugo thinks he will come out of the river that easily. He still feels the need to absorb more power and energy from the river, and he says he will absorb everything as much as he can until the end. Unfortunately, there is a limit to what his body can accept. He starts coughing, and he starts sinking. Despite that, he still remains determined to ensure everything and get more stronger. Left with no other choice, Hugo enters the river and drags him by his leg. He wonders what is different in Vicar because it turns out being in the river wasn't enough for Vicar, and he has even drank the water. Hugo sees that Vicar already has teeth. He gets more interested in the child, and he asks Barrymore what the child's name is. So Barrymore tells him the child is Vicar Van Baskerville. He looks at Vicar and says it seems like a very greedy child has been born. He tells Vicar to enjoy the situation as much as he can. At the same time, Vicar feels he needs to use the time he has to sharpen his canine silently so that when it is time for him to rip off Hugo's head, he will do so, and the entire family will disappear into history. He threatens that it is by his hands that the family will get destroyed. Some years ago, when Vicar was 8 years of age, he was talented enough to be called a genius. But he was considered an ordinary member of his family. At the age of 20, he took on the assassination, espionage, and conquest-type missions. At 29 years of age, he felt that he had reached his limit in swordsmanship compared to those of direct lineage. At 30, the gate leading to the demonic realm opened, which marked the beginning of the demon clan's invasion of the world. At the age of 35, he endured through the war of destruction, slaughtering monsters left and right. At 39 years of age, the long war finally came to an end with the victory of the human realm. At 40, he was rewarded by the family for his loyalty to the family, and the reward he got was defamation, false accusation, and the guillotine's blade. After he leaves the river, they carry him to a place that he recognizes as the nursery. He remembers that if he is at the nursery, it means he has successfully absorbed the Styx River. In this life, he has a better starting point than in his former life. The maid comes in holding an item, and she complains, asking why Madam wants that kind of thing on Vicar's bed. He wonders who the madam is and says he is sure no one will give him, a bastard, any type of gift. The maid drops the box, and immediately she turns to leave. The box starts opening on its own. Some dark air flows from the box, and he sees a snake coming out of the box. He recognizes the snake as a bloody mamba, and he tries to crawl away from it. There are 2 different snakes in the box, and he wonders if the madam has sent the rare vipers to assassinate him. He says there are only a few members of their basketball family that can be called a madam. And whoever the madam is, she is probably trying to kill him to reduce competition. He feels when the vipers are done with him, they can also kill all the babies in the nursery. He holds the throat of the vipers. He threatens that no one can hold him this time around because he will bring the entire family down with his own hands. He kills the vipers and throws them by his bed. The following day, all the members of basketball come to the nursery to check on the kids, and they are all shocked when they see a child sleeping peacefully next to 2 dead vipers. All the nannies who had been on shift that night were executed after being tortured. But the reason for the viper's appearance was unknown, and only the young hound Vicar knows the truth. 8 years later, he has grown into a young boy. And he is taking lessons along with the other young masters. That day, they are taking a course about the levels of swordsmanship, and their teacher narrates that any one of them who can't yet imbue the sword with mana is considered a sword beginner. At the level where they can infuse the blade with a little bit of mana, they will be called sword experts, and when the blade Emits mana and liquid like aura form, that's when they are called sword graduator. The last level at which the aura is solid and the form can freely be changed is called sword master. The strongest of the Baskervilles Hugo is at the sword master level. All the students are amazed by Hugo's strength. Vikier, however, considers that if Hugo was already a swordmaster at that point in time, that means he needs to regain the power he had prior to his regression before the coming-of-age ceremony. The teacher notices that he is lost in thoughts and it looks like this. Not the first time it's happening. The teacher thinks about him. He feels Vikier has earned a strong physique by diving in the Styx River for 7 minutes, and he only needs to teach him one thing for him to learn 100 things. The teacher says Vikier is more talented than the others, and feels Hugo will be very happy to know his progress. He doesn't know that the thoughts that fill Vikier's mind are how many years he needs for him to kill Hugo. Right after the class, some of the noble boys try to bully him. They call him the garbage van and push him. They claim they have been hearing some weird rumors about Vikier, and the rumor says he dived into the Styx River for 7 minutes and he also strangled 2 vipers when he was a baby. Vikier doesn't answer them. He knows the boys too well. They are the same ones who had stabbed him when he was running after his defamation. They are called Hugo Le Baskerville's Tridents. He tells them the rumors are untrue, but they ask him to stop lying. The boys are Highborough Le Baskerville, Middleborough Le Baskerville, and Lowborough Le Baskerville. They are all 9 years of age. Middleborough says he doesn't like Vikier and his brothers agree too. Vikier knows the kids are going to be a real pain in the ass in just 10 years, and it might be a good idea for him to put them in their place now that they are still young. One of them brings out a sword and tells Vikier that if he stayed in the Styx River for a long time, his body would become like steel, which means blades can't injure Vikier. He says he is sure Vikier won't die even if he is stabbed. They signal to each other, and Laboral goes to hold Vikier by his mouth so he wouldn't shout. He says he doesn't care if Vikier has spent 7 minutes in the river. He will eat his ass if Vikier survives without breathing for 3 minutes. Vikier looks at them angrily. He admits to the rumors that children are cruel, but he decides to play along with their stupidity for a while. The others claim there is no way the rumors they have been hearing are true. They hold his hands to stop him from breathing for a minute, and he hasn't dropped dead. For 3 minutes, he remains standing. They continue for 10 minutes. And they realize the rumor may actually be true. Highborough Baskerville and Middleborough feel the game is no longer fun, and they tell Laboral to let Vikier go. When Laboral removes his hand, he sees he is the one injured. They see that Vikier has bitten Laboral's hand, and they ask Vikier what he is doing. He asks them if the reason they kept their hands on his mouth isn't for him to eat it. The others claim they aren't scared of him, and there is nothing he can do to them. But Laboral is scared and terrified. He tells his brothers that he got his finger bitten off. So they calm him down and say they will go to ask the priest to put it back. As they are about to go, Vikier asks them who released them to go. They try to fight back, telling him that they are a year older than him and they are stronger. They try to stab him. But to their shock, the blade can't penetrate. He addresses them and says they are the ones who seem to forget that they are all Baskerville, and that in their family, power and talent overcome age. He holds Highboral's hand, and he twists it. He tells them they don't have to run, and they have to keep playing until the end. They get terrified, seeing the way he is squeezing their hand. They realize that the rumors they have been hearing are actually true. He kicks Highboral and he falls. His brothers scream his name in anger, and Middleborough decides not to accept defeat. He goes ahead to hit and fight Vikier. Vikier hits him too and tells them that they should not be too scared because they will get better in no time when they are treated. However, the issue is he won't allow them to leave that room, let alone get treated. And he is sure they will have to leave the room with the discomfort of their own bodies. Eventually, he decides that he will be generous and allow one of them to leave. They are excited, and they ask him which one of them he wants to release, but he tells them they have to decide for themselves which one deserves to do. He insists he can't wait for long, so they don't have more than enough time, and they should decide quickly because at least one of them should live. They realize that there is a probability that at least two of them may die, so they come together to decide who will leave. As you know, such decisions are not easy to reach, and as time goes on, the Triton of Baskerville starts to split, whereas the butler goes to report to Hugo that there was another bloody situation with the Moore clan in the ruby mines. He says that the Morgs clan is stating that the ruby mine is their territory. However, Hugo tells Barrymore that an opportunity to discuss the matter will come soon because the Moore clan will seek them first. He asks Barrymore if there is another report, and he tells him that there is a news regarding the interim evaluation of the juvenile fortress. Barrymore narrates that Vickers has scored the highest on the student's written examination, and Hugo is impressed. He asks Barrymore when the practical examination for the children at the juvenile fortress is, and Barrymore informs him that it is in 5 days. He says the Guardian Knights have also vacated the premises in preparation for the physical examination, and by 5 days, the fortress will be completely vacant. Barrymore tells him there is another matter of urgency that he needs to inform him about the juvenile fortress. He reports that there has recently been a big fight among the young masters, so Hugo asks how many of the children died. Barrymore claims there weren't any casualties in the fight, but Highbrow's teeth had been completely damaged. At the same time, Middleborough's jaw has been smashed in, and Lowborough's left index finger has been amputated. He continues and says the kids have recovered their health since they have been treated, but the psychological damage done to them seems very significant. Hugo wonders how the fight has started. He claims there is no way the Burrows would fight among themselves since they are so close, so Barrymore informs him that the fight was against another young master, and the person who had wounded the 3 young masters was a young master who is just 8 years old. He tells Hugo that it was Vicker who had injured his seniors, and he is the same one with the highest written score on the written examination. As a result of what he has heard, Hugo calls for Vicker and Vicker goes to see him. Hugo welcomes Vicker, telling him that he has grown tremendously since the last time he saw him. Vicker greets Hugo and calls him patriarch. And Hugo tells him that he heard Vicker had disabled the 9-year-old triplet in his senior class. Vicker replies to him that if he is referring to the brothers, he is sure the brothers have received proper treatment since the issue. So Hugo explains that he is not talking about the physical disabilities that he has inflicted on the brothers. He claims he is talking about the disability of the heart. He further explains that since the issue happened, the brothers have been eating separately, and now they don't even talk to each other anymore. Before, their combination techniques were quite decent, but now their relationship is completely torn apart. Vicker doesn't have anything to do, and Hugo asks him if he doesn't think he is wrong. Vicker wonders what he has done wrong, so Hugo claims he has turned his brothers into a total mess. Vicker doesn't believe what he has done is wrong. He tells Hugo that it's because he is stronger than them, and asks Hugo how a stronger person can be wrong. Hugo still doesn't think he is right. He tells Vicker that he has called the brother earlier and he has met with them, and they said they would forgive him, yet he doesn't feel any ounce of guilt. Thinking of the statement of forgiveness seems silly to Vicker. He wonders what they are forgiving him for. He remembers one of his old memories. He recalls the period the youngest daughter of a family which was ruined by the basketball clan came to visit Hugo. She had become an unfollowing that incident. And during her visit to Hugo, she told Hugo that she had forgiven him and offered a mess. Hugo's response after the mess was that he believes forgiveness is just an excuse made by the weak, who cannot seek revenge due to their lack of strength. Vicar repeats the same words to Hugo, who says that only the strong will reign supreme and weakness is a sin. He tells Vicar that he understands their family motto very well. He calls Barrymore and asks him to allow Vicar to take whichever snack he wants from their food storage. He says he should allow Vicar to take just enough that he can carry out of the palace himself. Vicar laughs and he asks Hugo for chocolate. He appreciates Hugo for his kind gesture and attempts to leave with Barrymore. Before he reaches the door, Hugo calls him his son. He tells him to try to do well in the physical evaluation. He asks him to ensure he doesn't lose the evaluation to the direct descendants, and Vicar promises to do his best. He goes to the storehouse and he takes the chocolate. It's the infamous chocolate that is enjoyed by the Germans of the Moor clan. Barrymore tells him the chocolate is the highest quality that was obtained with might difficulty, and Vicar says he also doesn't want anything that is processed. Barrymore wonders if he is really rejecting the best chocolate in the store, and Vicar repeats what he has said. He says he wants cacao beans, the ones that have a rich aroma. Barrymore hasn't met a child like that before. He asks Vicar again if that's what he wants, and Vicar replies affirmatively, so Barrymore brings out the beans. He tells him that they are the bloody beans that are known for their rich aroma, and with one bean, he can produce 100 liters of chocolate. Barrymore wonders if he intends to eat the beans on their own and says for Vicar to eat such bitter beans alone, then he must really love chocolates. He thinks about Vicar, and he feels that within the restrictions Hugo has set for him, he has found a method where he can have as many chocolates as he wants. He comments that Vicar is very brilliant. The servant asks Vicar if he wants them to process the bean and send them to his room, but he says there is no need for that. He says he will take the beans as they are. At that point, Barrymore assumes he isn't intending to use it to produce unlimited chocolates. He wonders if Vicar has a peculiar taste, however. What they do not know is that Vicar doesn't want to eat the chocolate. His main aim is to use the bloody beans during the practical examination within 5 days. He knows that on that a huge catastrophe would occur that has never happened at the Baskerville clan before.
Children of the Baskerville family are put through strenuous events and early education from a young age. Being able to take their first steps meant they had to run up a steep mountain. Never allowed to lie down or be on their stomachs. Time to sleep is only ever with a monster corpse to adjust to tough environments. When completed, they turn 8 years old, starting their deadly evaluation. Bringing us to the practical evaluation, which is a survival exam. The young masters are gathered in a territory far end of the Le Rouge-et-Le mountain. Pavlov, the instructor of the exam, instructs the masters on what needs to be done. Survive for 1 month while hunting large and strong monsters. 10 points were given for surviving. 30 if they survive without being disabled. Failing others and surviving 50 points. Surviving after beating a monster, 70 points. If all conditions mentioned were done, 90 points. Stealing badges from others make their points yours. Dying results in 0 points. 100 points do not exist. Pavlov reminds them of Hugo's lesson that a swordsman dies when they become arrogant. He advises them not to leave the designated area as the mountain contains many undiscovered things. During the exam, shadow dogs will hide and grade them. Gossip spreads amongst the candidates as they talk of the rumors about Vikir. Wondering if he was going to be good at the practical as well. Vikir smiles as he remembers the mountain. The triplets avoid looking at him. Pavlov rings the bell, marking the start of the exam, and praying for their fortune. The young masters instantly vanished, each with a plan of their own. The triplets argue with one another. The killing was not prohibited as it resulted in deducting points. Pavlov smokes a cigarette knowing that the shadow dogs will keep casualties to a minimum. A shadow dog is seen following Vikir. Wondering where he was going, looking forward to Vikir's skills due to his previous achievements since young. Vikir arrives at a huge tree, noting that the soft ground is best. He decides to live and take a break here as the shadow dog watches him. Shadow dog is shocked at him taking a break. Vikir gathers wood and is building things like in Minecraft as the others fight amongst themselves. The shadow dog is in disbelief as Vikir simply was gathering resources and wonders if he plans to just hide here. He decides to leave. Vikir takes note that he had left while reminiscing about the past. Before, a subordinate had told Vikir that cacao beans make fish less smelly and that bloody beans were the best. Vikir stares into flames and smoke knowing he had finished preparing. Deciding to start hunting as pits of spears are seen surrounding him. A few days have gone by as Vikir walks into the restricted area. Back when he was a scout, he could walk around here causally. He notes a burning smell and finds burning poop. Yes, poop is on fire in this world. Meaning only one monster has that kind of poop in this area. Vikir is happy to find what he was looking for. A beast with flames in its mouth stands above Vikir. It was a hellhound. The hellhound was a beast that swallowed the hellfires of the oil world, causing its body to become one with flames. Vikir was barely able to defeat one at the age of 18 in his past life. Being 8 years old now, it was impossible for him to defeat it now. However, Vikir, thanks to his past life, he knew a way to beat it. He dashes towards the hellhound. Knowing that one of its weaknesses was moving in straight lines only, making it hard to change directions but easy to dodge. The hellhound is stunned that Vikir dodged. Vikir opens a bottle with water, spraying it across the ground as it was another weakness for hellhounds. They could not step across any volume of volume. This causes the hellhound to avoid the water on the ground as it runs towards Vikir. Thanks to the water, it exposes another weakness that all canines have, opening its mouth while running. Vikir takes a step back as the hellhound lunges at him with its mouth open, the exact moment Vikir waited for. Vikir flicks something into its mouth, and causally dodges the hellhound as it tries to circle back to Vikir. However, the hellhound feels something was wrong and stumbles to the ground whimpering. Vikir reveals that chocolate was poison to canines, and since one bloody bean could make 100 liters of chocolate, it was the ultimate poison for it. The hellhound lays on the ground whimpering, unable to move. Vikir walks towards it drawing his sword, looking for where the ribs aren't present to target its kidney. The hellhound whimpers in pain as the sword pierces its body. Vikir does the final blow and a blue essence forms from the body. It was called XP or Karma, created when you catch monsters after energy accumulates in their body, making them stronger. Vikir absorbs it, making the short sword he wields lighter. Vikir is happy as he'll be able to catch up to his regression state before he is of age. He wonders what Hugo's face would make when finding out that an 8-year-old brought back a monster whose rate is B+. With this monster, Vikir secures first place in the practical test and has decided on what reward to get. The reward is a book that only he knew its true worth. Vikir proceeds to decapitate the head of the hellhound but senses a presence behind him. He turns to see 4 more hellhounds. He wonders if they came because of its cries and that they wanted to avenge it. Vikir chops off the head of the dead hellhound, excited at the thought of fighting more of the hellhounds as he had more beans left. However, a bigger presence is felt by the hellhounds, and Vikir notices. Believing the hellhounds to be afraid of his bloodthirst, the hellhounds bow their heads in fear. But hellhounds never submit even if they were to die. Vikir realizes something and turns around to see a 3-headed figure. A Cerberus? Vikir is alarmed as it has a rating of A+, but it was supposed to be at the 7th ridge. Why was it here, Vikir thought. Vikir notices wounds and blood dripping from its body. Multiple arrows with other injuries were inflicted upon the beast upon closer inspection. Vikir concluded that it was because of the barbarian tribes across the mountain, as it was their territory, and that it came all this way because of being chased by them. Vikir saw the chance of a lifetime. To hunt an injured A+ beast. He must kill it no matter what. Vikir had been hiding his power, having mastered the third Baskerville technique and being at a high level as a sword expert. But he had already reached a level that no other hounds have reached when they had become adults. Vikir covers his blade in aura and dashes to the injured Cerberus. He attempts to slice one of its heads but was interfered with by its other head. He slices it in reaction. Upon slicing it, he realizes that killing it was possible. Due to the war with demons, Vikir was able to polish his swordsmanship and there was no sign of unnecessary movements to his techniques. Add on his strengthened body from the river Styx. All weapons Vikir worked against the Cerberus. But that was what he thought. Reality hits him hard, as the Cerberus lands a deadly blow on Vikir, smashing his sword to bits. Vikir lets his guard down for a moment, resulting in a deadly blow from its claws. Vikir is flung straight into a tree. He coughs blood as his eyes turn white from the impact. He suddenly awakens, thinking if he had lost consciousness after the direct hit that was dealt to him by the Cerberus as it walks towards him. He feels the pain in his left arm, making him think that his arm had been ripped out. He checks to see and is surprised to see his arm still intact. He thanks the river Styx effect for keeping his arm. The Cerberus readies for another attack. It dashes toward him, smashing the tree that was behind into bits. Vikir leaps out of the way before it could harm him. He thought to himself, even though his arm was still there, the damage still remained and that wouldn't be able to take a second hit. The Cerberus turns around. With the odds against him, he thought of the situation as a journey that every experienced hunter must find a way out of. He thinks of the best possible action to take and decides to simply just run away as fast as possible. The Cerberus was alarmed seeing him running away. It chases after him. Vikir thinks that he was lucky that the Cerberus was injured, else he would have been torn apart by now as he continues to run away from it. He just has to make it past the iron fence, making him exit the restricted area. Vikir leaps over the iron face and readies himself to reach the place he had prepared beforehand as the Cerberus reaches the iron fence as well. If he was caught before reaching that place, it would be the end for him. The Cerberus rips apart the iron fence with its face, roaring loudly as it continues its chase. Dashing through the trees, he looks around to spot the area. He notices a pile of wood in front of the tree, making it the area where he was supposed to be. He runs with all his might, just a little bit further, he thought to himself. A bit more. He screams as the Cerberus chases right behind him. Realizing it was the perfect moment, he leaps into the air just as the Cerberus opens its mouth to attack. A single step forward onto a marking causes it to sink into the ground. Vikir lands on his back, safe from its attack, breathing heavily. While the Cerberus was met with many spears hidden in the ground below. He welcomes it to the cradle of swords. Wiping the sweat off his face, he was happy that the traps he made for hellhounds were useful against the Cerberus. Bloody beans were spread onto the spears that were in the ground. Being the same species as the hellhounds, the Cerberus was poisoned easily as its two heads cough vomit and are in pain. Its middle head notices Vikir, growling at him. As he holds a spear aimed at it and throws it with all his might. The spear bounces off its body as it growls loudly toward Vikir. Vikir starts to count down from 7. With each step the Cerberus took, a second passed. It slowly reaches Vikir, as the countdown approaches 0. Once it reached 0, it simply fell to the ground. Vikir lets out a sigh of relief as the Cerberus falls to the ground just before him. Happy to know that the rumors were true about the 7 steps. He explains that the spear he threw was different. That it was laced with the poison of the bloody mamba's venomous fang from when he was a baby. He goes on to absorb the mana from the Cerberus, meaning that it was fully dead this time. He stares at its corpse, thinking about how he should bring it back. But before that, he had something else to do. He knew that the presence of a Cerberus meant one thing: dungeon. Since its gatekeeper was dead, the dungeon was free to be explored. Vikir proceeds to cover himself in dried soil, rotten leaves, and moist roots. Looking at its footprints and drools, he backtracks it. He walks to an opening, saying he found it. He enters the cave, recalling that the cave was meant to be discovered in a few years' time. He stares deep into the cave, feeling its mana underneath the rotten surface, knowing that it has not been discovered yet. No light was given out, making the cave seem deeper than he thought. He smiles happily, excited at what treasures are laid within the dungeon as he slowly enters. As he walks further deep into the dungeon, Bakir notices red veins of ruby minerals throughout the area. Feeling that they were connected to the Red All Mountain. He notices light appearing before him, indicating that it was the entrance to the dungeon. The light shines brightly at him, making him cover his face with his hand. He enters a large room, and at the center of it was a floating red stone. Realizing that the dungeon's interior was bright due to the mana imbued into the ruby as he approaches the floating ruby. He notices something behind it, a skeleton with a note. Showing that someone had been here before him. He inspects the skeleton, seeing its injuries caused by stabbings and that there were dried brown bloodstains as he picks up the note on the ground. A long time has passed for the skeleton. Bakir reads the note and recognizes it as a Baskerville member's writing. The note reads that the writer did not want to reveal his name, and asks to be called Cain. The reason behind the note was to prevent other generations from doing what he did. Further explaining that the stone chamber was talked about in the family as a legend. His brother, Abel, and he had coincidentally came across this place, raiding the dungeon and its countless trials. They had killed many monsters before arriving at the chamber, to find the final assignment to the place. The final assignment tied their feet here for a very long time. 3 years to be exact. Bakir can't believe that they stayed for 3 years, hinting that the brothers really wanted the treasure and that the final assignment was somewhere in the chamber. He looks at the stand of the floating ruby and sees some writing. When entering it's 1, but once inside it's 2, when leaving it's 1 was the riddle written on the stand. The note continues, with the brothers contemplating the ominous text forever until they came to a conclusion. The fact that they were twins meant that they were once one in their mother's womb, but when given birth they became 2. Meaning to get the treasure they had to become one again, and only one of them could leave with the treasure. After a fierce battle, Cain killed his brother and there was only one left in the stone chamber. But there was no change at all. Cain wonders why the treasure did not appear even after killing his own brother. He wonders why screaming. He decides to leave, wanting to tell others that found this place to leave immediately and that there was nothing to obtain in this devil's den that only serves to taunt humans. Bakir concludes that the brothers had done all sorts of things, only to leave empty-handed. Knowing that he had no twin, Bakir believes that the brothers had misinterpreted the text as he looks at the ruby. Thinking of the riddle once again. He thinks hard, knowing that no dungeon cannot be beaten. Upon looking at the skeleton again, an idea comes to mind. Bakir figured it out. Stating that the brothers were unlucky due to being twins, and that idea had they fixed to it. He mentions that the answer lies in the dungeon as he reaches for the ruby. Saying that when he entered the dungeon, he was 1. But as soon as the ruby light was cast upon him, he was 2 due to his shadow. He smashes the ruby into pieces, knowing that without its light, darkness re-enters, making the stone chamber open its final stage. The riddle answer was shadow. Pieces of the ruby that fell to the ground started to rise up, and energy from the rubies opens the passageway in front of Bakir. Bakir smiles happily as the final stage opens. Revealing a sword, the relic of this devil's den, the cause of the brothers' death. The sword glows red with an evil aura. The text below it states that only those with Baskerville's blood can wield Beelzebub. He was shocked to find that the sword was Beelzebub as he stands in front of it. He recalls reading a picture book during his childhood about the gluttonous fly, Beelzebub, who was an unprecedented great monster that invaded the lands in the old legends as part of the devil's holy constellation called the 7 Calamities. To stand up against the 7 calamities, the heads of each of the 7 families took one each. The first patriarch of the Baskerville fought against Beelzebub. Remnants of Beelzebub were stored in the lands of the Baskerville. Its demonic energy was said to lure monsters, an old legend that no one believes now. But the legend was true, as the sword was taken by the demon clans, resulting in countless deaths among the humans on the battlefield. Vikir grabs the sword in excitement, saying that it won't happen again, as the sword was now his. As he holds onto the sword, it lets out a ferocious energy as if it was howling. He grunts loudly as the sword seems to be absorbed by his hand. The sword places itself into Vikir's hand before appearing as a blade from his arm. He mentions that he was lucky to have a blade made from a devil's holy constellation, as the blade exudes a murderous aura. His red eyes glow similar to the blade as he raises it to his face, wondering how much stronger he'll be in this life. Looking around, he realizes that there was nothing else for him to take and prepares to leave. But he feels something was wrong with his body. He stumbles onto the ground, wondering what was wrong. Was he dizzy? No, he was hungry. The blade makes noise and Vikir wonders if it wants to eat something. He leaves the dungeon, holding his stomach in hunger. Hunger was ringing inside his stomach. Noting that his sense of smell had improved as he smelled something delicious. The sword pulls him along, much to his surprise, wondering if there was something to eat in the direction it was pulling him to. He reaches the corpse of the hellhound he had killed before. The blade shoots out a tube into the corpse. As it absorbs the blood, Vikir feels his inside were getting back to normal, guessing he was starving for a long time. He hoped that the mountain's dried condition was not due to the sword's hunger and wondered how long it takes to feed it. Beelzebub makes a happy sound as it had eaten well and has absorbed the hellhound's ability, hemorrhage. Vikir wonders if this was Beelzebub's inherent ability. Beelzebub was the glutton of files and was said to possess the power to absorb its enemies' skills as its own. Since its absorption amount was close to infinite, many people lost their abilities and became obsolete. But due to its hazard, Vikir could absorb 3 skills only for now. He describes the Hellhound's ability as a skill that constantly pumps out the blood of its opponent even through its smallest wounds. Realizing he could steal abilities, he looks at the Cerberus corpse. Beelzebub grows excited at the thought of feeding on it. Vikir is alarmed and asks it to wait. He explains to it that it can't eat all of it, as if it was too damaged. He couldn't explain it during the autopsy. He thinks silently as Beelzebub makes constant noises as it consumes the corpse. He slaps Beelzebub, saying he had enough. Beelzebub was upset but had gotten 2 new skills. He had even absorbed the power of the sewer rat underneath the Cerberus. Vikir picks up the rat, happy that he had absorbed many powerful skills this time. He decides to wait at the practical exam site as he was done preparing the monster. The young hounds had gathered back together, each covered in various injuries. They would receive a shield, sword or necklace as their reward based on the parts produced from the monsters they hunted during the practical exam, as monster parts are laid on the table. The senior members are astonished at what Vikir had hunted. Hugo is alarmed to hear the news. Barrymore reports that Vikir during the practical exam had accidentally crossed over to the restricted area, allowing him to hunt an A+ Cerberus. He further reports that it was wounded by the barbarian clan and that Vikir had applied poison to his wooden spear, as Hugo mentions that a Cerberus was something that even the family's guardians would avoid. Hugo further asks what kind of poison could kill a Cerberus and where Vikir had gotten it. Barrymore mentions that the report did not include such details and wanted to ask Vikir, but Vikir had returned to the dorm as he was too tired. Hugo compliments Vikir, saying he was so sly already and that information was power, and that power is your worth. Barrymore was shocked that a master named Van and not Lo or La was this talented. Hugo replies that he was unlike the previous leaders. He didn't discriminate against a hound based on its bloodline when raising them, as long as it had enough talent and spite. Adding on that there were mutts that came from the royal bloodlines, asking if Barrymore understood him. Barrymore is concerned as he ponders whether Hugo was thinking about his second son who was preparing for isolation training, as he apologizes to Hugo. Hugo says it's alright and asks for Vikir to be summoned. Vikir stands in front of them with a smile on his face. Hugo asks how he caught the Cerberus during the exam. Vikir says that he placed the chocolate on his wooden spear, saying that it was lethal to canine monsters. Hugo asks if that was the reason why he asked for chocolate before, and Vikir says yes. Barrymore thought to himself if this is how fathers and sons usually talk to one another, as they didn't greet each other. Hugo further questions Vikir on why he did not respond, and the butler asked him about the hunt. "He wasn't my master," Vikir replied. "Who is your master?" Hugo asks. "The master of the clan, since he belonged to the clan," Vikir responds. Hugo is happy with the reply. He rewards Vikir with the corpse of the monster and grants him a wish. Vikir wishes to be granted access to the 10,000 Epistle Library. The 10,000 Epistle Library was one of the largest libraries in the empire and resided deep within the heart of the Baskerville clan. Hugo ponders, asking if he knew that only the patriarch and second-in-command along with their direct descendants were allowed to enter. Vikir says that if it was not permitted, he would give up on it, thinking that he needs to sneak in instead. Hugo grants him access, much to Vikir's surprise. He asks him to read the 6th technique of the family located within the 6th restricted zone deep inside the library. Vikir is stunned, as he was just given permission to learn a technique that an illegitimate child was not allowed to. Recalling that Hugo's current level was the 7th technique and that in his past life, Hugo had reached the 9th. Remembering the discrimination he faced in his past life, Vikir promises that in this life, he will surpass Hugo. As he will obtain the greatest essence of Baskerville, a textbook containing the teachings of the first patriarch who subjugated the 7 great disasters. Hugo stares at Vikir, looking forwards to his progress, and wishes him luck. He bows his head, thanking Hugo and saying he'll surpass his expectation.